All right, so we're going to have a look at your quiz 2 over lessons, I believe it was 1.4 to 1.6. Now the order of these questions are going to be different for everybody because the way the quizzes were set up is all the questions were shuffled, and if they were multiple choice, the choices were also shuffled. So for this first one that we're going to look at is they gave us this list of data for the price of a brand new SUV of 6 different models and thousands of dollars. And so we're going to find the 5-number summary. But we're not actually going to change the numbers to thousands of dollars. We're going to leave as they are. All right. So first off, the 5-number summary, we have our minimum value and our maximum value. I like to start there because those are the easiest to find. So the minimum value would be 12 and the maximum would be 33. And next, I like to go to the Q2, which is the median of the set of data. Now, if you notice with this data, our median is going to be between the third and fourth term. And so our median is going to be somewhere between 15 and 18. So to find that median, remember what we do is if we have two middle numbers, we average them together. So we're going to take 18 plus 15 divided by 2, and you get 16.5. Now what that median does is it cuts our data into two separate parts, a lower half and an upper half. So now we're going to look for the Q1, which is the median for the lower half, and our Q3 is our median for the upper half. So there you can see that your median in the lower half would be 15, and your median for the upper half would be 21. So that's how you do this problem, finding the 5-number summary from data. Now there's another one we're going to find the 5-number summary, and it looks at a box plot, but we'll get to that here a bit. All right, so let's look at this one. This one, dealing with the same situation, the same scenario. It says if the IQR is 6, what is the outlier? If there is none, type none in the blank. Do not actually change the numbers to thousands of dollars. Leave the answers numbers as they are. Okay, so we're trying to figure out if there's an outlier here, knowing that the IQR is 6. Now in this scenario, I gave you the IQR. Just know that if you ever need to find the IQR on your own, you would take your Q3 minus your Q1, which if you look back up here, if we take 21 minus 15, sure enough, we get 6. That's how we find the interquartile range, is what that's called. So to find out if there's an outlier, we use what's called this 1.5 times IQR criteria. And this is something that I would recommend having on your cheat sheet, even though you can use your notes, but remember, having that in one spot would be useful. So using that little tool, 1.5 times IQR, what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, 1.5 times 6 is 9. So that 9 is what we're going to call a measuring stick. So any number where it's 9 units more than our Q3 or 9 units less than our 15 is going to be an outlier. So that's why I call it a measuring stick. We're going to put that on both ends of our data here with our Q3 and our Q1. So 21 plus 9 is 30. So anything bigger than 30 would be an outlier. And down here with the 15, we would subtract 9 because we're going to the left on the number line. And so 15 minus 9 would be 6. So anything smaller than 6 would be an outlier. When you look at your data, there's no number smaller than 6. But we do have 33, which is larger than 30. So 33 would be your outlier. All right, so in this one, it says a box plot represents the number of personal computers in use by country in the year 2006. When we're reading a box plot, if you don't remember this, when we're reading a box plot, we have different segments here. Let me do this. We have this segment, we have this one, we have this one, and we have this one. Each of those segments represent 25% of the data is within those segments. Okay, so if they're really spread apart, if they're big segments, that means the data in those segments or in those intervals are really spread apart. If those segments are bunched up and really close together, that means that the values in that range are really close to each other. And so when it talks about where is the middle 50% of our data, that's focusing on just the box here. So the middle 50% of our data would start at 20 and end at 55. So it'd be between 20 and 55 million. So for me, with these choices, it would be letter F. But for you, that might be different. You just want to find the one that would be 20 to 55 million. So here we're using that same box plot, and we're finding the 5-number summary based on that box plot. Now, for some reason, there was a lot of people that had some weird answers. So I want to make sure that this one here, that in particular, that you know how to read this. So the minimum value would be this lowest point here, which would be 10. The maximum value would be here at 240. Just because our number line goes to 250 doesn't mean that we have values there at 250. And then our Q1 was here at 20, our Q2 is here at 30, and our Q3 is between 50 and 60, so we can estimate that to be at 55. All right, now I have this one worked out because this one required a little bit of practice, a little bit of work here, so let me make sure you understand what's going on. It says Susie saves some money that she makes and puts it into a savings account. Her savings for the last 8 months are in the table provided. You may want to complete the table to answer the questions below. Okay, so then obviously you would have had to write this on a separate sheet of paper. But when we look at this cumulative savings, what that means is a cumulative amount is a total through that time period. So in this case, it would be through the end of January, through the end of February, and so on. So through the end of January, she deposits $300, so she would only have $300 in the bank. But in February, she deposits another $550. So we just add that to 300 and you get 850. So you just keep adding these amounts to get the next value, and so on. And so when you get to the end, we have $4,725. So that means through the month of August, she has a total of $4,725 in the bank. What some of you guys did is you added the cumulative amounts, and that gave you a huge answer, which that doesn't make sense. If you did that, you didn't understand what cumulative means. Cumulative means it's a total, it's an ongoing, it's a running total. So through the end of August, we would have $4,725. If you wanted to total everything up, the only thing that we would have totaled up would have been this middle column, and that would also give you $4,725. But the reason why we have that separate column is also to answer the other questions. All right. So with the next one, by the way, some of you guys that took this earlier in the class, some of these hints, the no commas wasn't in there. I went through and I made corrections because some of you guys put a comma in there and it marked it wrong. And so I gave you points for that. So I just want you to know that I went through, and for some of the classes, I gave you extra points based on your submissions and then corrected this, so then that way we could avoid the same problems in other classes. But anyhow, so the next part of the question says, what percent of Susie's total savings has she saved by the end of the 5th month? So through the end of the 5th month, she saved $2,750. And so to figure out what percent of her total that would be, we would take that divided by 4,725, and you get 0.5820, which would be 58.2%. Oh, and then also too, let's talk about that one. It says round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So some of you guys lost points because of that. You need to make sure that you understand how to round. So some of you guys read that as, oh, round to the nearest tenth of a percent. Oh, tenth of a percent would be 0.60 because a tenth would be 0.6. No, you first, when it says that, you want to first change it to a percent and then look to see what decimal place to round to. So this, if you change it to a percent, we put the decimal here, and so rounding it to the nearest tenth of a percent, we would ignore the 0, and so we would have 58.2%. So I want to make sure that you understand how to round. That is significant. And then it says, during what month did she reach 75% of her savings? So now we just take 75% of her total, and you get $3,543.75. And that happened during the month of June, because in May we had $2,750, but in June, with the deposit that she had, now it's over that $3,543. So during the month of June is when she met that 75%. All right, so the last one, so this is one that a lot of people have problems with, and that's finding the variance and standard deviation. I also went through, just to let you know, and gave people individual points for this one based on their answer for the variance. You might have lost points for the standard deviation as well. So I gave you points back for some of you, and I'll explain that in a minute. But here we have this set of data. This is the SUV price in thousands of dollars. Again, the same problem that we had earlier. It's just that I put it in a table. And again, we're treating this as a sample. That's significant when we go to find the variance. All right, so the way that you're going to do this one is we first want to find the mean. And so to find the mean, we do that just like we normally would. It doesn't matter that it's a sample to find the mean. You still add up the 6 numbers together and divide by 6. So when you do that, you get 114. Divide by 6, we get 19. And so that would be our mean value. So to find the deviation, we're going to figure out how do each of these values differ from the mean. So we would take 19 minus 12, 19 minus 15, 19 minus 18, and so on. And so we get that middle column. And then we square those numbers to find the squared deviation. So when you square those numbers, you get your third column. And then we add those numbers together and you get your total, or your sum of the squared deviations is 282. So to review, to find a variance, it's always the sum of the squared deviations divided by n, or n minus 1. Now the most common mistake is that people forgot that this was a sample. And so they divided by 6. And so if you did that, you lost a point. What you want to do is you want to divide by n minus 1. And so dividing by n minus 1 would be, instead of dividing by 6, you would divide by 5. And when you do that, you get 56.4. Now the standard deviation, it doesn't matter if it's a sample or a population. The standard deviation is always going to be the square root of the variance. So again, what's over here on the right with what the variance is and what the standard deviation is, I'd strongly recommend having that in your cheat sheet also. So in that way you can reference it quickly if you need to during the test. So this is where some of you guys got points back. So what I did is I went through everybody and just make sure that if you got an answer where if you took the square root of your variance, and if you got an answer here for your standard deviation, I gave you a point back. So that should have been the case for everybody. If I missed someone by accident, please just shoot me an email and I'll double check on that. But otherwise, I think I went through everybody's and did that correctly. All right, so that was the quiz. So hopefully that answers the questions that you might have gotten wrong in any of those particular problems. If you still had a question, please shoot me an email or text so I know to help you out.